Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship F-150 of Tennessee Fro. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one with a fro has gone before. Hi, welcome to another episode of Over 40 and Unapologetically Nerdy. Hi, I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. In this week's episode, I will discuss Black Excellence with Hanelle Culpepper, the director of the first several episodes of Star Trek Picard. And I'll also discuss Absolute Candor, the fourth installment of the Star Trek Picard series. I'll introduce you to my new play boyfriend, Elnor, the new Romulan Kung Fu master, and one of the coolest ex-Borg 7 of 9. She's back. And I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I have enjoyed creating it. So welcome back to the episode. I record this episode from my home. I got up this morning enjoying probably one of my favorite drinks on the planet. I love coffee, and anybody that knows me know I love coffee, but I am really digging this medium roast blend from Writer's Block Coffee. Writer's Block Coffee is probably one of the best and most patiently blended coffees I believe that's on the planet. Navigate to writersblockcoffee.com/Tennessee Fro and use my coupon code to get an additional up to 10-15% off your first order and subsequent orders and off of shipping. This will actually keep your eyes wide open and paying attention to whatever that you're doing. It's either you are creating your podcast or just driving down the road to go see the movies. Writer's Block Coffee, and tell them that 10 Fro is reading sent you. Now, on to Black Excellence. I am celebrating Black Excellence this week by the director, veteran director, Hanelle Culpepper. She has such credits as directing the first 3 episodes of Star Trek Picard, but she also has street cred with her previous experience with Star Trek, the Star Trek series Discovery. I did include a picture of her with Sonequa Green and the Terran Empress. I can't remember that actress's name, but they're pretty bad butt on that series. She's also has other directing credits in a show called Counterpart, which I never have heard of, Supergirl, which everyone has heard of, The Flash, which was Sheldon's favorite, and Gotham. And the showrunner for all of the new Star CBS series, Access series, describes her thusly. Hanelle is a gifted and dynamic filmmaker whose directorial choices are always deeply rooted in character, said Alex Kurtzman, Discovery's co-creator, executive producer, and showrunner. I've been a fan of her work since she started with us on Discovery, and she's the perfect person to reintroduce the beloved character of Picard to long-term fans and new viewers alike. We're thrilled she's joining our Trek family on this next adventure. So hats off to the Queen, Hanelle Culpepper. I don't think we will see, this is the last that we've seen of her. They've actually wrapped filming for I believe all of these episodes for this particular season, and they've already announced the renewal for a second season of Picard. And she will share credits with Jonathan Frakes of Next Generations fan, and she will have just as many credits probably as LeVar Burton of Geordie LaForge fan. It's really weird that this, like all other Star Trek episodes or series, are just as diverse as the original series that debuted over 55 years ago, but it's still controlled by one little short white dude. So, but I don't know. I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is. Now, what I have been always hopeful for, and I didn't discover until this past December, was in order for people to listen to your podcast, you actually have to put out content. When I endeavored to do the 12 podcasts of Christmas, that's when that realization actually hit me. And I got and garnered a wider listening audience with several hundred episodes coming within a very short period of time. In the beginning of this year, I endeavored to reach 1,000 downloads because I found in one of the classes that was sponsored by Podbean that sponsors for advertisements, they don't really look at those shows with less than 1,000 downloads. So I thought, well, if I continued along this pace, if I continued to put out a minimum of 3 podcasts a week and downloads of anywhere between 20 to 30 downloads a piece, how would I be able to then garner the types of the number of downloads that I need in order to become to start to grab the attention of the advertisers. Well, lo and behold, right after I made that announcement, I hadn't even reached 500 downloads at that time. And as of today, I have reached, let me go back because it kind of shocked the crap out of me too. I am at an all-time high of 719 total downloads, with 203 coming within the last 30 days, 69 within the last 7 days, and 9 just yesterday. And I'm hopeful with me, and this is both channels, my my over 40 and unapologetically nerdy channel, and then my regular Tennessee Frowish reading channel. Someone is liking what I'm doing. I'm getting downloads, or people are listening to me as far away as Spain and Saudi Arabia. I'm not censored. How crazy is that? The most popular download seems to be those that have or were my unapologetically nerdy downloads with spoilers from Picard, shocker, as well as when I went back talking about High Fire and my trek back to the University of Florida. There's so many nerds scattered all over the country, with runners up being in Tennessee, Florida, and Illinois, as well as sprinkled throughout the rest of the world and coming from different platforms. Podbean is the highest one, but also people are listening to me on Spotify as well as on iTunes, and it just tickles me pink. This passion project of mine it really does describe what I do. Because I'm doing this scripting and publishing as an unpaid podcaster at this time. In a way, it is freedom, because I really don't have to limit my statements. I don't want to be censored, so I try to keep the MFs and the gosh darns to a minimum, but I don't also comment on things that would affect my paid daytime job, because even though it would be great to get the sponsorships necessary to actually have this podcast pay for itself, wouldn't it be great the day would come when I'm writing up and posting on my blog and I actually get truly paid per blog post? That would be amazingly awesome. So thank you all to the listeners as you are scattered all throughout the country. It tickles me pink that you guys have dared to tune in to Over 40 and Unapologetically Nerdy, as well as Tinfro was reading. And I hope you're actually enjoying what you're hearing. And one day, a publisher or advertiser would actually pay so I can actually even bring you even more great content. So now on to Picard, episode 4, An Absolute Candor. First, there was a comment on this tight storytelling of the first 3 installments, with the exception of a few of the fight scenes that involved the Tal Shiar house guests of Picard's that were on Picard's vineyard. And, you know, the first pilot, I was just so excited about another new Star Wars coming to fruition that the subsequent episodes kind of dragged for me. But I'm comparing that to this past week's episode, the 4th episode, Absolute Candor. Picard in this episode decides to take the expedition to find Bruce Maddox on a detour they were navigating to Free Cloud, but then he decides to go on a detour to the planet Vashti, a Romulan relocation site where a group of what appears to be a sword-wielding Romulan nun sect called the Qowat Milat reside. An early flashback shows that Picard was a god of sorts here when he was leading the effort to rescue the Romulans from the supernova. This group, which tripped me out as secreted female warriors, believe in complete and total transparency of all things, which is so anti-Romulan, who are so shady and so treacherous. But they are still straight up Romulan, even though they reject all of the traditional Romulan values of treachery, what was going on here? Let's see. And you can hear the typing in the background because as my script, I actually am editing it while I'm actually doing the episode, which I found to be kind of cool in my previous publications. But anyways, I'm very intrigued with Picard's connection to the recent history of Romulan historical cycle of destruction and then subsequent rebuilding, with many interior entities battling for supremacy at all costs. This starts all the way back with the cloning of Picard, the Shinzon Remus character, and Data's death in the Star Trek movie Nemesis. But I bet if you took a closer look at the timeline, it goes back even further with Tasha Yar, the first security officer, who I found out was Bing Crosby's granddaughter, who she never met. And they basically disowned her because Bing Crosby was a bit of a butthead. And I don't believe he allowed his son Dennis. He was not really approving of his own son Dennis. And he was also known to be abusive. But again, I digress. As I was saying it, through Tasha Yar's and her alternate timeline on the Enterprise C and D dealing with the Romulans. Now you flash forward another 20 years with the destruction of the Romulan homeworld with the supernova. The writers and creators are dedicated to diversity and history, and I find it amazing with all the darker complexion Romulans and the Asian influenced martial artists like Elnor and even the Qowat Milat nun sect, harkening back to the live action upcoming movie Mulan. But again, I digress. I think the ancient African and Asian society melded into the treacherous Romulans does make for great TV, but really, y'all. But anyways, coincidentally, the group Picard is fighting is the Tal Shiar sect, the Zat Vash. And the planet the Romulan warriors are on is Vashti. I'm wondering if this is going to come into play later. This episode also reveals one of the closest things Picard has ever had to a child, Elnor, my new play boyfriend, Evan Evagoria. He is angry at Picard for abandoning him 14 years ago when the synthetics attacked Mars, and therefore they were all stranded and plunged into obscurity on this planet. Since then, he has become quite a warrior himself, perceptive in realizing that one of Picard's flaws is that if something is not happening right in front of him, he is generally uninterested, as Raffi can attest to. We meet his newest member, him, and he's left with these warrior nuns. What is truly cool and cinched Elnor's sense of coolness and was one of the most poignant, one of the many poignant parts of scenes in this particular episode. He beheads a black ex-senator, Romulan senator, and then after he gets really pissed off and tells Picard to go sit down somewhere, he then comes back and defends Picard against this black dude who's pushing up on him. And of course, just like the Vulcans, Romulans evidently also have green blood. But he goes straight up gangster Romulan on him, beheads him like something from Sitting Tiger, Dashing, whatever that movie was. And kicks, of course, slices and dices them before they all beam off the planet onto Free Cloud. Picard is not satisfied with this brutal outcome, but nonetheless, Elnor departs with him and on the rest of his journey. And it also is not lost on me how fine Evan Evagoria is in his Romulan costume. Just saying. And of course, we have our first space battle scene featuring Picard's mode of transport, the La Sirena. And also, was Jurati very awkwardly flirting with Rios? For the love of the prophets! And it's so crazy that I'm sitting here in my Bajoran communicator and Quark's bar t-shirts when I say this. But please give her something else to do. In the meantime, Rios, one of the best pilots in the galaxy, we're told, has some difficulty outmaneuvering an ancient Klingon bird of prey. That ship is purportedly being piloted, the Klingon ship that is, by a pirate who has taken over the sector. Although we never see the said pirate, this pirate, however, that's going to come up later. Over on the Borg cube, Narek and Soji are still doing their thing. The scene where they both slide down a hallway as a Borg ritual was something else. Again, I'm not sure where this is going, but Sarek of Spock fame, I think that's a connection. And I think Spock is going to come up again in this particular timeline or subsequent timelines. He awkwardly interrogates Soji, post-romantic slide. Not really sure where they're going with any of this, but he was just kind of doing his Zat Vash job. But is he, though? He's kind of stringing this along because I think he's vibing on Soji. But again, I digress. Then it's followed up with an incestuous scene with Rizzo seductively stroking her brother, and then she chokes him, which is kind of confusing because I thought she was a hologram, but maybe the safeties are off. My assumption is that next week we head to Free Cloud with our favorite former Borg drone and my new play boyfriend, the Romulan Bruce Lee-like Elnor, and find out what they all have been up to for the past decade and a half or so. It seems as if Jean-Luc or JL left many folks hanging when he called, or when the Starfleet called his bluff. From Data's twins, my play boyfriend Elnor, Michelle Hurd's character, indirectly Rizzo, and I'm thinking 7 of 9. Finding Maddox in Free Cloud with all these people with pin-up aggression is going to make for some pretty interesting upcoming episodes. We are 4 of 10 in with so many potential storylines to explore, and I can't wait to see how the writers are going to really pull all of this off. Well, that brings us to the end of this podcast. So this podcast is my path to entertainment, and it truly is a passion project, but it is truly a form of therapy and an outlet for creative freedom. However, if you don't have this type of outlet and you're struggling with depression, anxiety, or addiction, please call 1-800-273-8255. This chat line is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's a online chat feature at Suicide Prevention Online, preventionlifeline.org/chat/. And if vodka is the problem, you can also dial 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-HELP for 24/7 help. And then there is also the Doctors on Demand at Talkspace and Doctors on Demand. Don't forget to navigate to www.DalesAngels Inc. for all special offers and updates on nerd news. And drop me a line at TennesseeFroisReading@gmail.com. If your 2-minute message is non-trolly, I may actually read it on air. And if you're tired of free rolling and you like what you're hearing, please don't hesitate to become a patron at patreon.podbean.me/thetalkingfro, or you could put 5 on it by leaving me a tip at paypal.me/FeliciaDAI. And I hope you have enjoyed this podcast as much as I have enjoyed creating it. And also join me next week as I parse out and dissect and do all the spoilers for the next episode of Star Trek Picard. And again, thank you for joining me. Resistance is Judo. Bye now.